like supervisors. The process of employee induction may require that supervisory staff or administrative staff should be able to find time to be able to take new employees through an induction or orientation program. So lack of time may be one of the challenges that may be experienced when you want to conduct an employee induction program in any given organization. Secondly, employees may be provided with a lot of information, and this may lead to information overload during the orientation process, where the employees may, for instance, be required to be taken through a whole process of induction, maybe in 1 or 2 days. So this information overload may also be a challenge that might not be handled effectively with the new employees who have been hired to a given job because of information overload. The other challenge that may be encountered is the lack of knowledge about organizational operations by some of the employees who are expected to provide the employee induction program. So in cases where those who are supposed to provide employee induction may not have the requisite knowledge, the requisite skills to be able to provide the orientation effectively, then this becomes a challenge to the process of employee orientation or employee induction. Fourthly, employees who have been inducted may be thrust or thrown into the actual work after orientation. And this may not work well for the newly hired employees, in the sense that once they go through an orientation program, they may not have the requisite exposure to be able to carry out what it is required within that working environment. Hence, that becomes a challenge of employee induction. Number 5, lack of documents and manuals to conduct in the employee induction. What this means is that an organization is expected to have manuals that are supposed to be used to conduct the employee orientation program, but due to changes that take place within the working environment, it becomes difficult for an organization to compile manuals that are relevant at any one given particular time to be used in the process of employee induction. Hence, this becomes a challenge in the process of employee induction in an organization. So, dear learner, we have looked at the process of employee induction in this particular section of our lesson, and we have seen that employee induction is the process of orienting or culturalizing an employee or socializing an employee to be able to acclimatize to a working environment, to be able to take up the roles that have been assigned at the shortest time possible. This process has areas that employees are supposed to be taken through, and these areas are supposed to be mapped out clearly. There would be benefits through the induction program, where employees can settle down very quickly within their roles in terms of the process. They can also be able to have some affinity and affection to the towards the organization. But on the other hand, there are also some challenges that may be encountered in the employee induction process, which may include aspects like lack of time, lack of documents to be able to carry out the process, and also lack of knowledge among some of the employees who are supposed to carry out that particular process. Organizations are supposed to take measures to ensure that the employee induction process is conducted by senior management, who can give this the administrative push and support that is required to ensure that newly deployed workers are able to settle within this particular process they are able to take their tasks seriously and be able to contribute to the work environment and be able to provide their contribution to realization of both individual and organizational goals. So thank you very much for your attention. Dear learner, I welcome you to our continuing revision for the KASNEB Human Resource Management CS paper, Human Resource Management. My name is Dr. Evans Sagwa, and I have the pleasure to welcome you to our continuing revision series for the KASNEB May 2017 examination paper on Human Resource Management. We are going to look at question 3 of the paper. Question 3 had 3 parts, part A, part B, and C. Question 3A required that the candidate should explain differences between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge in an organization, 4 marks. Question B, discuss 3 benefits of knowledge management, 6 marks. Examine 5 advantages of exit interviews to an organization, 5 marks, and the total marks for question 3 were 15 marks. We will start with question 3A. Question 3A. Now, question 3A required that the candidate should explain the differences between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge. Tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge. Now, before we answer the questions, we should appreciate that tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge are 2 concepts that are used in knowledge management within the knowledge management setting. Now, what are some of the differences that may occur, may be seen between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge? The first difference that can be there between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge is that tacit knowledge is knowledge that is held in the minds of the individual, and in this case, this is held in the minds of the worker in a given organization. On the other hand, explicit knowledge is knowledge that is held or contained on databases within a given organization. And this explicit knowledge could be knowledge like information about policies, information about procedures, information about manuals, which may be in hard copy, printed paper, or may also be on soft copy stored in computers. Now, secondly, the other difference between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge is that tacit knowledge is difficult to share. Whereas explicit knowledge can be shared easily. And now what this implies is that in terms of tacit knowledge, it is contained in terms of the minds of employees. So for you to share this knowledge, then it means you must create environments where these employees can come into teams, can come into committees, can come into groups that can enhance knowledge sharing, but employees will share that knowledge based on their discretion. On the other hand, when it comes to explicit knowledge can be shared much more easily, because if this is information which is on a record like a piece of paper, it can be photocopied, it can be read, it can be relayed on email, it can be sent to workers, it can be put on a flash disk, and hence sharing becomes easy. Thirdly, tacit knowledge. Employees own the knowledge. Ownership of tacit knowledge is on employees. Employees own this knowledge and they can either share it or they don't share it. On the other hand, explicit knowledge within an organizational context is owned by the organization. What this implies then is that for you to get access to tacit knowledge, sometimes it may be given at the discretion of employees who may actually have copyrights for this information, or they may own this particular information and it is up to them to share with the organization or not. On the other hand, an organization owns explicit knowledge within an organization, and this might be the property of an organization which may be patented for purposes of this particular organization in relation to that arrangement. Now, the question required the candidate to explain the differences between tacit knowledge, and this could be some of the differences we can allude between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge within an organizational setting. Question 3B. Question 3B required that the candidate should discuss 3 benefits of knowledge management. Discuss 3 benefits of knowledge management. Discuss 3 benefits of knowledge management. 6 marks. 6 marks. Now, what are some of the benefits of knowledge management? In an organizational setting, or generally in terms of knowledge management, how can organizations benefit? Now, when organizations share knowledge, it helps in hastening decision making. For instance, if an organization has a database in relation to the rules, regulations, and manuals, whenever a worker wants to do something, the worker would refer to that manual and make a decision without having to consult people. In so doing, decision-making process may be hastened and time is saved, and resources can also be saved. Secondly, another benefit of knowledge sharing within an organization or knowledge management is that previous mistakes can be avoided. Where there was a previous mistake within an organization and it was documented and this information was shared among people who work within that particular setting, it will be critical that that kind of a mistake should not be repeated, because the knowledge has been shared that if X is done, then Y will be the outcome, and in so doing, an organization can be able to avoid mistakes that have been previously done, and in the future, such mistakes are not repeated for the benefit of the organization. Thirdly, the other benefit of knowledge management within an organization is that the organization can use the knowledge as a competitive advantage. An organization can use the knowledge as a competitive advantage in its markets. Such that when knowledge is managed and contained within the organization, secrets are not leaked from to the outside competitors, then the organization can enjoy a sustained competitive advantage in the market in which it operates with its competitors, and this can be adduced to the knowledge management sharing processes. And because in modern times we are operating in the knowledge age, then organizations will compete on the basis of how they manage knowledge, and not only manage the knowledge but also use it to their advantage. So these are examples of 3 benefits that may accrue to an organization from the process of knowledge sharing. The C part, question 3C, required that the candidates examine 5 advantages of exit interviews to an organization. Examine 5 advantages of exit interviews to an organization. And for these 5 marks. Now, before we tackle the question, it is important for us to understand what is an exit interview. An exit interview, as used in human resource management, is the process where an organization creates a situation where an employee who is leaving an organization is able to provide some information, can be asked some question, can also request for some responses to certain questions. So that is an exchange program within that particular setting where information is shared. After saying that, then what are some of the advantages of exit interviews to an organization? One, obtaining of information. Obtaining of information. What this means is that an employee who is leaving an organization, for instance, proceeding for retirement, this employee could have worked for this organization for a duration of time, has gathered valuable information that could be useful to an organization. So during this exit interview, this information is obtained from this employee who is retiring, and this information can be used to improve on processes and systems of working within the organization based on the experience that this employee might be having after working for the organization for a given period of time. The second advantage of exit interviews is that the exit interview provides an opportunity for proper closure of the employment relationship. Now, what this implies is that an employee could be leaving an organization and this employee is resigning. So an employee who is resigning, the reasons might be personal, or the employee might not be happy with certain things within a working environment. An opportunity for an exit interview provides a system where the employer and the employee can come on one table and be able to exchange information and be able to close the employment relationship on a positive note, where information is shared as far as possible to close that relationship so that the employee can part in peace and the organization can remain to continue as the case might be. That is the second advantage that may accrue from conducting exit interviews in a given organization. Thirdly, administrative processes can be finalized. When employees leave an organization, they could be having certain property that belongs to the organization. They could be having company property like a vehicle. They could be staying in an organizational house. They could also be having some instruments, like they could be signatories to bank accounts. They could also be owning certain things, and the company has guaranteed them. So during this process for the exit interview, an organization is able to provide for an avenue where administrative processes like handing over and taking over take place, and this is finalized to ensure that in the future there are no gaps and the property of the organization is also accounted for and the employee is allowed to leave the organization. Fourthly, corrective measures. An employee could be leaving an organization and resigning or going for better or what you call greener pastures. The opportunity to conduct an exit interview provides a chance where the employee can provide feedback to the employer regarding what is not being done within the working environment so that the organization can be able to take care of the shortcomings. For example, an organization may not be having a policy on career progression. So where an employee has a feeling they have overstayed in a particular grade and they require to be given a promotion, then an organization could think of coming up with a scheme of service, that can be put in place to ensure that employees can move progressively, they don't stagnate, and these corrective measures can ensure that the working environment is conducive for retention of workers. Lastly, number 5, an exit interview provides an opportunity to obtain suggestions for future engagements. An employee, for instance, could be leaving an organization for purposes of further study, or the employee could be leaving the organization to solve some domestic problems. So during the exit interview, an organization is able to get a commitment from the worker that if at a future date the organization may require their services, whether they could be available. So through this exit interview, the organization can get contact addresses, can get communication, can get availability information regarding when the employee can be available, so that if their services are required, they can be able to serve the organization again. So these are sample 5 responses that could have been provided where the examiner wanted 5 advantages of exit interviews to an organization, and we have seen this would include obtaining information, proper closure of the relationship of employment, administrative processes finalization, corrective measures being taken within an organization to retain workers who have remained, and suggestions for the future where engagements can be looked at. So Lana, this is question 3 of the CS paper, part 3, section 5, Human Resource Management, that was conducted by KASNEB in May 2017, where we have looked at question 3A, which required a difference between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge in an organizational setting, where we have looked at sample responses, 3 of them, where tacit knowledge requires that it is held in the minds of workers within an organization. Explicit knowledge is held on databases in an organization. It is tacit knowledge is difficult to share, whereas explicit knowledge can be easily shared in terms of databases, among others, and so on. Then ownership of tacit knowledge is mainly in the minds of people or in the minds of worker. When they come to the workplace, they come there with it. When they go home, they go with tacit knowledge. On the other hand, explicit knowledge is owned by the organization. So those ones are sample answers for question 3A. And for question 3B, the candidate was expected to discuss 3 benefits of knowledge management, which had 6 marks. And we have gone through this and indicated that knowledge sharing may enhance hastening of decision making within an organization. Previous mistakes can also be avoided, because if knowledge is properly managed, this could be a learning experience. Then organizations can be able to enhance their competitive advantage based on the knowledge they have. So how they manage the knowledge within the organization can ensure that the organization can sustain its competitive advantage in the market and be a market leader within its setting, because in this modern age, we are competing on knowledge, and organizations that manage their knowledge well are able to compete effectively in the markets, have a sustained competitive advantage, and be able to survive because of superior knowledge that they have that their competitors may not have. Then finally, there was question 3C, which was requiring the candidate to examine 5 advantages of exit interviews to an organization, and the question had 5 marks, where we have indicated that sample responses, obtaining of information, for example, employees who are retiring can give valuable information, Now, for proper closure of the employment relationship, where an employee could, for example, be resigning, then administrative processes are completed, where an employee can hand over any property and the employee can also be given what is due to themselves. Then corrective measures can be taken, where employees who are going for greener pastures could inform the organization of what they need to do to retain workers of their caliber. Then suggestions for future, where contacts can be obtained and finding out whether this employee can be available to serve in the organization can also be critical information or an advantage that can be obtained to ensure that the organization can benefit from these processes. So, dear learner, we have come to the end of our revision session for now. My name is Dr. Sagwa, and in the subsequent lessons, we shall also be giving you sample answers and discussing responses to examination questions in the Human Resource Management paper of Certified Secretaries Exam of KASNEB. Thank you very much. Dear learner, welcome to our revision series for KASNEB Certified Secretaries Human Resource Management paper. My name is Dr. Evan Sagwa, and I welcome you to this revision series. We are going to look at the KASNEB Human Resource Management paper for CPAs Part 3, Section 5, November 2016, Human Resource Management. We will be looking at initially the case study, then the other questions. The question on the case study requires that the candidate reads the question and answers the questions that follow. So we'll read the question, case study. Question 1, you are the Human Resource Director of ABC Enterprises Limited. During the last 2 years, the organization's profits have been on a downward trend, and this has resulted in rumors through the grapevine that retrenchment might happen sooner than later. The Chief Executive Officer, CEO, who is also the majority shareholder of the organization, has summoned you to his office to discuss the general performance of the employees of the organization, which seems to have slackened over the last few months, leading to decline in profits. The CEO started the conversation by stating that there must be a change immediately to address the issue. The CEO suggested that the first department to be scrapped was the Human Resource Department, because according to him, what the department does is clerical work which could as well be handled by any other person. In addition to getting rid of the Human Resource Department, the CEO was of the view that employees were also enjoying too many welfare benefits which he felt were reducing the profits of the organization. In order to cut costs, the CEO directed that all employees' welfare benefits be scaled down. As the Human Resource Director, your attempt to explain to the importance of the Human Resource Department in the organization was ignored by the CEO. The CEO's parting shot in this one-sided conversation ended with an ultimatum that if you think the Human Resource Department was important to the organization, then you only have 24 hours to prove it. Otherwise, the whole department would be dissolved. Required: A, explain 6 ways in which the Human Resource Department contributes towards the achievement of organizational goals, 12 marks. B, discuss 6 consequences that an organization is likely to experience in case of employee separation, 12 marks. C, Evaluate for benefits of labor welfare services to an organization, 8 marks. Then D, evaluate the leadership style of the CEO of ABC Enterprises Limited, 8 marks. Then the total marks for the case study are 40 marks. Before answering the question, it is important to appreciate that a case study question provides a background on the basis of which the candidate is able to understand the concepts, is also able to see different dimensions of the subject and the case and the aspects that have been brought there. Like in this case, it has mentioned several aspects, the issue of the CEO not being for the aspect of welfare for workers, the issue of the human resource function not delivering according to the CEO, the issue of scaling down of services. So the questions that have been asked may elicit responses from the case study, and it may also require use their knowledge in terms of the understanding to be able to respond to the questions. So the first question, that is question 1A, we can be able to look at a sample response. Question 1A, the question requires that the candidate explain 6 ways, in which the human resource department contributes towards the realization or achievement of organizational goals. And this question has 12 marks. Before attempting the question, it is important for us to appreciate that the human resource department in an organization is one of the department, one of the functions that may be assisting the organization towards the overall organizational goals that might be there. But in this case, the human resource department concentrates with the aspect of workers, who are the most important resource that any organization can have. And the examiner here requires that the candidate should explain 6 ways in which the human resource department may contribute towards the achievement of organizational goals. Like in this case of the company that we are looking at in the case study, ABC Enterprises Limited, the organization is realizing that profits are going down. So the human resource department is supposed to contribute towards enhancement of the profitability of the organization. So it is possible to say that through training and development of employees, the human resource department can be able to contribute towards the achievement of the profitability of ABC company by ensuring that the employee training needs, employee development needs are bridged to ensure that the company can be able to produce products that can be able to enhance its competitiveness in the market, and by so doing, realizing profitability of that particular organization through employee skills, employee development in terms of attitudes, and skewed towards performance and also quality of products. Secondly, an organization requires to have a conducive environment. So the human resource department contributes towards a conducive working environment. The human resource department or the human resource function assists an organization to be able to manage cordial employee-employer relations, and through these employee-employer relations that are cordial with the minimal industrial action that takes place, like in cases of strikes, the human resource department is able to ensure that workers concentrate on their work without having to have delays and waste of time, and by so doing, realization of organizational goals. Thirdly, through attraction of high caliber workers. the human resource department is able to attract high caliber employees who have the knowledge, who have the attitudes, who have the skills, like in the case of ABC Limited, to ensure that these particular employees are able to be attracted to this particular organization through the human resource department, apply for jobs in this particular organization, work for this organization, and ensure the organization achieves their objective of being a market leader or enjoying a market share within the market within which they operate and so on. The other aspect, maintenance of employees. Through the human resource department, an organization is able to provide welfare facilities, is able to provide maintenance of employees, is able to ensure that employees are provided for to be able to sustain them within that particular organization. So that's the fourth way through which an organization will maintain employees in an organization in good health to ensure they are able to work and realize their objectives and targets as individuals, and by so doing, realization of organizational goals and targets of that particular entity. Then number 5, statutory compliance. Statutory compliance. The human resource department or the human resource function in an organization ensures that an organization deducts from employees' earnings their income tax, tax, and remits the same to Kenya Revenue Authority. They also deduct, where applicable, National Hospital Insurance Fund deductions and send to the National Hospital Insurance Fund. They may also deduct NSSF deductions and send to National Social Security Fund to ensure that the organization is in good books with the law, to ensure statutory compliance instead of getting the wrath of these organizations that are supposed to maintain the law as far as working environment is concerned. And also aspects like Occupational Safety and Health Act, OSHA, so they comply with the requirements to ensure the work environment is safe, free of hazards, and workers work very well, and there are no disruptions because of occupational accidents and non-compliance with the law. And in so doing, an organization can be able to maintain itself and be able to achieve its objectives. Then finally, we can say an organization may be able to carry out performance management processes where the organization is able to carry out the performance management cycle of fixing targets. Now, these targets that are fixed for employees, employees are taken through the process of ensuring that they are supported. They realize these particular targets. They realize their targets as departments, as sections, and organizations also realize their targets as entities in relation to performance management processes, which also include the performance appraisals that take place within these particular organizations. So this question required that the candidate provides an explanation of 6 ways in which the Human Resources Department contributes towards the realization of company goals. Now, company goals can be varied. An organization may want, for example, to enjoy a market share. An organization can, for example, want to be competitive. An organization may want, for example, to expand its business, expand operations. An organization may want to diversify its production lines. So in attempting this question, it is important that when the candidate is attempting the question, the responses are given and examples drawn from these goals that the organization is able to achieve, so that you can link Human Resource Department contribution towards achievement of organizational goals for maximum marks for that particular question. And in this case, training and development, an employee in an organization who is developed is able to work efficiently, and those particular goods and products trained workers produce are able to endear the organization to its market the organization is able to expand its market share, and by so doing, the organization achieves its objectives. So candidates are expected to be able to demonstrate their understanding in this kind of questions in relation to how the Human Resource Department contributes towards realization of the overall organizational objectives, because the Human Resource Department does not exist for the purpose of just existing, but for the purpose of providing support to the other operational departments, and more importantly, ensuring that workers are used to the optimum, because motivated workers, workers who are assigned proper work, workers who work and they are properly maintained, properly attracted, they are competitive, the conducive environment they work in is good, such workers can be able to make an organization operate differently and be able to achieve its targets in that particular market. So that is a sample response for our question 1A for the case study in relation to ABC Enterprises Limited, in which the CEO had wanted an explanation in relation to what functions the Human Resource Department does. Question B of the paper for November 2016 required that the candidates discuss 6 consequences that an organization is likely to experience in case of employee separation. 6 consequences of employee separation. Before we attempt the question, it is important to put the aspect of employee separation into context. And employee separation in this case, as it is used in human resource management, refers to that process where there is a termination of the engagement between the employee and the employer in an employee-employer situation where the worker provides labor or services to that particular organization. So in this case, the candidate is expected to discuss 6 consequences that an organization may face or may suffer in the case of separation of employees. The first one is negative public image. Public image. In a case of separation where an organization is terminating the services of employees, let's say through a redundancy or a layoff, the organization may be viewed as an employer that is not stable within the labor market, and this one may give a negative public image for the organization, especially with reference to future recruitment processes where they may want to recruit from the external labor market. So that becomes a negative consequence an organization may suffer. Secondly, loss of skills. Loss of skills and experiences. Loss of skills and experiences. What this implies is that when an organization has been engaging the services of workers, an employee might have worked in an organization for 15 years or for 20 years or for 30 years. Now, when this employee leaves that employer, the employee moves with the skills and experiences that have been acquired, and the employer loses the services that accrue in relation to these experiences that may be generic within that particular working environment, and that becomes a consequence an employer may suffer in relation to loss or separation of employee. Thirdly, litigation. Litigation or court cases. Litigation or court cases. Court cases. In certain situations, when employees leave an organization and the separation or the termination is due to a dismissal, some employees may challenge this dismissal in a court of law, And where there are cases that are preferred on an organization based on issues of, say, employee dismissal, the organization may spend a lot of time, may also spend a lot of resources in courts of law trying to defend their position, and by so doing it may be costly. The organization may also waste a lot of time on handling this kind of cases in court as a consequence of employee separation. Then fourthly, low productivity. Low productivity. Workers who have been working for a given organization for a long duration of time might have created teams that work seamlessly. Which means they communicate very quickly, they understand each other, they create groups, and they also have synergy. So in the absence of some of the employees or an employee who has been instrumental in these particular groups, then there is expected to be an element of low productivity as the new groups try to bond, as the new teams try to work together to learn how to provide services to the organization, and low productivity could be experienced whenever critical or crucial employees leave an organization, and that becomes a negative consequence an employer may suffer due to separation of employees who might have critical contribution factors or aspects in a work environment. Then as a fifth aspect, training costs. Training costs. What this implies is that when employees are recruited to replace those who have left an organization, there will be training costs which an organization is supposed to incur. For instance, orientation or induction costs, where the employer must now take through the employees who are joining the organization must be taken through an orientation process, and when they start working, they are also supposed to be inducted into their work environment, introduced to how the other employees work to ensure that they can be able to learn, and that is a cost that has been incurred as a consequence of an employee having left that particular working environment, which is also an adverse consequence. Then number 6, when an employee leaves an employer, the employer may be required to recruit replacements. Now this may also call for certain costs in relation to advertising of jobs. There will be panels which are supposed to recruit these employees, and also other administrative costs. Now, this recruitment of replacements and subsequent selections may sometimes not yield workers, and in some cases the positions may remain vacant for a very long time without replacements, and that becomes a consequence for which this particular employer may have to get ad hoc workers, or may have to pay some employees pay overtime so that some workers can be able to work extra hours to be able to clear the extra work, and by so doing, this issue of replacements sometimes may be also costly, as it were, to a given organization. So those ones are 6 responses that may be used to respond to the question that is asking the employee to discuss consequences that an employer may face in relation to employee separation. Like in the case study, examples can be drawn in the context of ABC Limited, where some of these challenges have been experienced. So that is your response, sample response for question B of the case study in the context of ABC Enterprises Limited. Then there is the C part of the question, which required that the candidates evaluate four benefits of labor welfare services, in an organization. in an organization. Now, this question had 8 marks, 8 marks, and the second question had 12 marks, 12 marks, and also the first question A had 12 marks. So this question requires that candidates evaluate 4 benefits of labor welfare services in an organization. So before we attempt the question, it's also important to remind ourselves of what labor welfare services are in an organization. Now, an organization may provide pay to workers, an organization may provide other facilities to workers, but it is incumbent that an employer goes beyond the basic requirements of the law and provide some welfare services to employees for purposes of their convenience and their next of kin. So there are some services that an organization may make available, of which we can use to be able to respond to these questions. For instance, an organization may provide transport services to employees. So these transport services can be used to take employees to the workplace, take them back home, or transport them to areas of work and so on. So this becomes a welfare service that the employer may provide, which could be subsidized or could be free to ensure that workers travel at convenience. Secondly, an organization may have canteen facilities, which workers use to access free or subsidized meals that could provide a balanced diet to ensure that workers are energetic, workers do not have to strain to look for meals. They can also have their meals within the convenience of the work environment and take a break or a nap, rest, and then recoup their energy as they go back to work and so on. So canteen facilities are examples of labor welfare services that an organization can provide, and these ones help in motivating workers, ensuring that workers are energetic, workers are able to work effectively without having to work if they're hungry. And then thirdly, another welfare facility that could be provided are clinics or dispensaries. An employee or the next of kin or a dependent to an employee could fall sick or could be unwell, and they could require medical intervention. So clinics or dispensaries that are supposed to be used as labor welfare services by workers and their dependents are useful to ensure that employees do not have to rely on the public health system that might not be readily available within the working environment or the context of labor. And in this case, when workers are assured of clinical services, dispensaries for themselves, this helps in motivating. They could also go and get what you call preventive medical attention or curative medical attention, which helps in ensuring that you have a healthy workforce within a working environment, which contributes towards the achievement of organizational goals. Some organizations may also provide educational facilities. These educational facilities may, for example, be schools that can be able to cater for the welfare of the children of workers or the workers themselves. They can also take some classes there. And this could be primary level of education facilities, secondary level education facilities, or post-secondary or tertiary facilities that organizations can make available as a labor welfare service to workers within a working environment, or employees could be sponsored as a welfare facility. This helps an organization in the sense that employees who have their children using these facilities, a child could be in Form 1, a child could be in Class 8, as the children go through this system, employees also continue serving and working for the employer for a duration of time that this particular employee's children are enjoying the facilities for education, facilities for learning. The employee will also continue working and serving the employer, and by so doing, these welfare facilities that are provided for employees as labor welfare facilities or services in an organization helps in retaining workers and contributing because workers are motivated There could also be other welfare facilities that we might not have mentioned here, including cloakrooms, facilities for employees to refresh and so on, which also assist in making the workplace conducive. So that is a sample sketch that candidates can be able to use to be able to attempt this kind of a question, which required them to evaluate 4 benefits of labor welfare services in an organization. Then question 1 had also part D, which indicated that the candidates are expected to evaluate the leadership style of the CEO of ABC Enterprises Limited. Evaluate the leadership, the leadership style of the CEO of ABC Enterprises Limited, 8 marks. 8 marks. Now, in considering this question from the case study that we have read, we realized that the CEO never gave the Human Resources Director an opportunity to make a contribution, an opportunity to give his view, an opportunity for the manager also to make a contribution. So it can be concluded that this style that the CEO was using was an autocratic leadership style. Autocratic leadership style. So that could be the first response that the candidate can give to indicate that this is an autocratic leadership style where this leader is one-sided and is not soliciting for contributions. Now, secondly, lack of input from followers. So this autocratic leadership style, one of its characteristics is such that the CEO does not want any other person to address the issues that are being indicated in this particular case study, and the lack of input from followers is a characteristic of this autocratic leadership style. Then thirdly, an assumption is made by an autocratic leader that followers do not have a contribution to make. Followers have no contribution. So what this implies is that the CEO has a feeling that whoever else is working in the organization is subordinate, and that subordinate cannot make a contribution, which is normally not totally true. And in this kind of a situation, we may argue that autocratic leadership is self-centered, is one-sided. Then fourthly, the autocratic leadership style is not necessarily bad, but the autocratic leadership style can also be useful when decisions need to be made urgently. Decisions needed urgently. So we can conclude that this autocratic leadership style that was being used by the CEO was being used because there was an emergency, and in this case study, profitability was going low, a lot of resources were being spent, and there was no time for consultation, and that is why the leader, or the CEO in this case, was preferring to use this leadership style. So these are a sample hints and responses that could be given to the case study of human resource management, November 2016, for the KASNEB paper on human resource management. And in summarizing this particular case study and its responses, we saw that in question 1A, the candidate was expected to explain 6 ways in which the human resources department contributes towards the achievement of organizational goals. And the 6 that were given is that 1, through training and development, employees can be able to be supported to enhance their skills, to upgrade their performance, to enhance the value and the quality, and in so doing, the organization can be competitive, like in this case, turn around the issue of not making profits. Secondly, the human resource department can contribute towards creating a conducive working environment within the workplace so that employee-employer relationships are cordial. The human resource function, thirdly, can also help in the attraction of high caliber workers. And getting high caliber workers who are talented is not a very easy job, and HR department or HR function can be able to contribute by doing that and getting workers who can make an organization to be competitive in its industry. Then number 4, we said point 4, maintenance of employees through provision of welfare services or facilities that enhance the performance of employees and rewards them within the context of work so that workers can, as human beings, be able to make a worthwhile contribution. Then fifthly, we have said that number 5, statutory compliance. This is one area where the human resource department can contribute by ensuring that statutory obligations are met, income tax is deducted and remitted to Kenya Revenue Authority or the body concerns, National Hospital Insurance Fund, National Social Security Fund deductions, occupational safety and health regulations are complied with to ensure that the organization is not only safe, it is a safe working environment, it is in compliance with the law, and it is working as per expectations. Number 6, which was the 6th point for question 1A, performance management. By fixing targets, the human resource department or function can ensure that employees achieve their targets, departments achieve their targets, and organizations are able to comply with what they are supposed to comply with for their customers. Then we went ahead and looked at question 1B, which required that the candidates discuss 6 consequences that an organization is likely to experience in case of employee separation, and the question had 12 marks. And the 6th point, we looked at them this way. The first one, we said there could be a negative public image if an organization declares, for example, a redundancy or a layoff of a substantial number of staff, and this may make the organization not to be able to attract future employees. Then the aspect of loss of skill. Workers who have worked for long periods of time, like 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, such workers, when they leave an organization for whatever reason, the organization experiences a loss of skills that could be generic to that particular organization, and that is an adverse consequence. Then issues of litigation, where workers are dismissed from a work environment. These workers are likely to move to courts of law to challenge the dismissals, and this might make a company lose quite a large amount of time in cases of litigation and arguing cases for workers who have left the organization through dismissals. There is also the aspect of low productivity as the 4th point, where an organization that has workers who have been working together in teams and have worked seamlessly together, now when new workers come, the synergy could be lost, and in so doing, an organization may experience low productivity due to separation of employees who might have been instrumental. Then the 5th point, training costs may be incurred to orient or induct workers who are recruited in positions for those employees who have left the organization. So that again becomes a cost that an organization has to incur. There is also the aspect of recruitment or replacement of employees who leave, and this might again go into issues of advertising, panels for recruitment for employees, issues of paying overtime for workers to fill in those positions where workers have left. That now was the 6th point we have suggested there for issues, for answering the question, discuss 6 consequences of employee separation, or that employers might face. Now, the C part of question 1, which was a case study, required that the candidates evaluate 4 benefits of labor welfare services in an organization. And this question had 8 marks. And the first one we looked at was that an organization can be able to provide transport facilities for workers to the place of work and back to their places of residence. And this one ensures that workers are able to operate conveniently and are able to reach the place of work in good time, and that one assists in ensuring that they are able to work effectively. Canteen facilities can be able to provide workers with opportunities to be able to get a meal that is fresh within the work environment, that could be a balanced diet, and this balanced diet ensures that these particular employees are able to work with energy and are motivated. Clinics or dispensaries can be able to assist an organization provide medical facilities and attention to workers and their families, and that was the third point. The fourth point, for purposes of evaluating benefits of labor welfare, was education facilities, which an organization can make available for workers and their children or their dependents and spouses to be able to assist them in bridging the gap of their children and themselves obtaining knowledge. And as the children use those facilities, workers continue working for the organization, and these workers can be able to conveniently ensure that they don't have to disrupt their schedules by looking for educational facilities for their children. And the last question, D, for the case study was, evaluate, the candidates were expected to evaluate the leadership style that was used by the CEO of ABC Enterprises Limited, and the suggested responses here are that the CEO was adopting an autocratic leadership style, and this autocratic leadership style does not solicit an input from subordinates. In that particular environment, the CEO was making unilateral decisions. The director was not allowed an opportunity to float any ideas, and in the context of autocratic leadership, followers are assumed not to have any contribution they can make, which is not necessarily true. And one of the advantages or benefits of autocratic is that in certain situations, like in the case study we have gone through, the organization was making losses, and the CEO might not have had an opportunity or a lot of time to make consultations, hence the adoption of the autocratic leadership style to get results very quickly. So in a nutshell, learners, this is our question 1 for the Human Resource Management paper of CS Part 3, Section 5, KASNEB Exams of 23rd November 2016, which we have gone through, and we have come to the end of that presentation, and we will be discussing the subsequent questions in our subsequent revision sessions. My name is Dr. Sagwa, Evan Sagwa. Thank you very much.
Welcome once more to our revision series. Last we had looked at question 4, which was only part A, and therefore we said part B and C were not within our syllabus, already not there. And we continue question 5, which I will explain question 5A, that is theory, and the other part B, which is network analysis, is not actually within our coverage. It is not retained. So we shall only look at question 5A, which reads, citing an example in each case, express the difference between quantitative function and discrete function. Quantitative function and discrete function. So that is question 5A. Now, before I talk about continuous function and discrete function, let me say in general that a function is simply a mathematical rule that will describe the relationship between variables. So when you talk about a variable, we are talking about a quantity that will change, or a characteristic under observation when it comes to statistics. So in this case, when I talk about continuous function, is that describes relationship between two or more variables. So this one, continuous function, is a function for data that assumes any value within a given interval. So when I talk about data that assumes any value within a given interval, it means that these are the values that do not have any, are capable of further subdivision. That is, they are variables or they are data that are capable of further subdivision. For example, the amount of chlorine, the amount of rainfall, those are values or data that can be any 2.5, 2.44, all those are continuous. Therefore, in statistics or quantitative analysis, example here would be normal distribution, comma, exponential, uniform distribution, because under normal distribution, we can talk about measurement like the height, measurement like the weight of students. Like they are normal because we have the breakdown, we have them centimeters, millimeters, and the rest. Those one will form continuous. And then we say that continuous functions are characterized by smooth curves. That is what we have here. The next is discrete function. Discrete function is a function in this case for data that assume specific values only within a given interval. Examples would be binomial distribution, Poisson distribution, among others. So these are, by citing examples, those are what we call the discrete and continuous functions. So you see, function in general, you can have as many those with having the jumps, the gaps, and the rest, but this is the gaps and the jumps will come from the fact that there is no breakdown in these values, because when I say that the values that assume specific data that assume specific values only, meaning that they are not capable of further subdivision. For example, if we talk about footwear, whether we go to Bata or that, we have got the sizes, size 2, size 3, size 4, but we don't have, thank God for the Mutumba, we have 4.1, but no further subdivision. So our barter system is just integers. Those are the values that, if we talk about people of their sizes, they have what we call discrete values. But when it comes to the height of people, we talk about continuous values, and therefore they give us continuous functions as well as discrete functions. So allow me to stop there, because the other part of the question is network analysis, which is not within our syllabus. So we stop there, and that now marks the end of recovery or revision of this paper of May 2021 sitting, and please, that is the end for this revision. Thank you very much. Yes, welcome to our revision series. Last we were looking at question 2, the whole of it, and as I said earlier, we emphasize the areas which is still retained in the syllabus. And for that matter, question 3, the 2 sections, we are not going to deal with them, because question 3A dealing with simulation and modeling is not there in the syllabus. Question 3B is the solution printout from the computer softwares, which is dealing mainly with sensitivity analysis on linear programming. We are supposed to get the basic of actual working of simplex. So that one also we omit. Instead, we look at question 4A, which reads, enumerate 8 applications of quantitative analysis in business. Enumerate 8 applications of quantitative analysis in business. Now, first of all, that is question 4A. Quantitative analysis is a process of collecting and evaluating measurable data such as revenue, wages, stock shares, etc., in order to determine their behavior in the long run. So that is the ideal reason why we have it's a process of collecting and evaluating. So you see, measurable means we are talking about numerical values, and that is what we have. So the first case that we look about here is we talk about the process here in project management. We are supposed to enumerate, so I can write them down and then explain. When we talk about a project comprises of series of activities. For example, you want to put up a factory. You want to put up a machine, even a posho mill. You have to evaluate what is the likely return from this my posho mill. That is, from the start, you have what we call capital investment. How much is the machine or posho mill costing, and so on. So the project management is that, in this case, what the likely returns for my posho mill first year, second year, and so on. That is what we'll be calling project management. Even if you talk about putting up a rental building, you must have first incurring the capital cost there, what the likely return for my business. How do I reschedule whatever I have that I have now to put up a building? Instead, maybe posture mill. What can I do? Posture mill might give me quick return, or that. That is, in terms of computation, we apply quantitative analysis for that. That is one aspect where we can apply the quantitative analysis in business, because even if you have plots and the rest, these are business entities which will generate income for an individual, so they are helpful in business. Number two, we have this one in the production management is one area. You know, production means that we have to talk of the so-called the inputs and the output. The raw materials, how many bales of cotton lint are needed for this case to produce an output of a given kind of shirts, which are cotton or what. So that is what we call production management, because for every production, there is always what we call input and then output. Therefore, in quantitative analysis, we have that specific particular topic which is referred to as input-output analysis, so that you can find how much raw materials are required to produce a specific output. That is production management, and we are deploying the skills of quantitative analysis, raw data and the output, raw data and the results. Remember, there is also the cost, because for you to have raw data, you acquire them from another sector. Therefore, this input-output analysis purely deals with the inter-sector relationship. How much do I depend on the other for me to produce? That is production management. Next, we have marketing. Now, in marketing, you have to purely handle the area of taste. You have heard several times whereby we have people have to go and advertise. The purpose of advertising is simply to find how much is the advertising impacting on actual sales. For example, if I talk about putting an advert for a sale of, say, cooking oil, how much do I have to spend on this particular item, and how much do I actually realize at the sale? The major idea here is to employ the idea of correlation. So the correlation will tell you whether you are spending more on the advert, and also the actual sales are also more. That will show you that there is positive correlation. If there is no positive correlation, then it is pointless to do extensive advert, because at the end of it, you may not do or realize your expenditure in terms of income. So what I'm saying is that under quantitative analysis, we have various sections that will be useful to analyze and apply to various sectors, because now for the marketing, you need to know how much is the advert affecting the actual sales. How much, for economists, is the savings connected to income, so that you can see how is the economy stable or what. That is still under correlation, and if by extension you can now talk about regression. All these are now for focusing purposes. But remember, we are talking about marketing. How much do people prefer our bank? As you are a bank manager, we have marketing department, any other, Safaricom, the service industries, all those are related. So we have marketing also deploying the skills of quantitative analysis. The fourth one we have here is what we call finance. You know, finance sometimes is difficult to that. So accountants use different quantitative uh, methods to do forecasting, because if you talk about projection in the companies, then you have acquired an asset. So the accountants can use the techniques like the rates of interest to do discounting. Discounting will actually help you to determine the actual return of this particular kind of project. Just remember, we talked about production and the other side project, but the discounting factor, the knowledge of discounting factor, rates of interest that is actually available should be able to assist the finance or accountant in determining the viability, because we have the viability will be having that what we call net present values and the rest. These are out of discounting factors, and therefore they are quantitative in nature for their computation. They'll have the finance section, and therefore we say that quantitative analysis is applicable to finance section and can be used from the particular area of discounting in terms of returns of investment. Therefore, finance utilizes the quantitative analysis techniques. The fifth one would be for personnel management. This one is where we talk, currently we don't talk about personnel officers, but we talk about HR, human resources managers or officers. They need to know how much do we need to retain, how much people, how many employees, the staffing for that matter. Now, if you look at the quantitative analysis, areas such as Markov analysis, Markov will show that how much do you have as exit. You know, in employment, we have exit and entry. How much do we have as exit? How much do we need to retain as a stable staff size? So that for every exit, due to maybe retirement, dismissal, sickness, and the rest, how much do we need to employ? Therefore, under the skills of Markov analysis, the HR people department can determine the stable size of staffing, and if possible, even upward mobility by training them or what we call capacity building. Therefore, it is important to note that even personnel management, which is particular human resource management, employs or applies quantitative analysis technique. It may not be all that simple, but in general, we know that, for example, right now, the government is not employing, or in particular, if say Teacher Service Commission, each and every year there's always a fixed number advertised for a teacher's secondary school and primary school. In effect, the size of labor force of TSC remains the same, round off around 300,000. So which means, what's the plan for the exit and what's the plan for the entry? That is, in particular, area of Markov analysis, that is quantitative analysis coming in. Now, the other one I can talk about is agriculture. Remember, they are using tools which are mainly quantitative in nature. So, when we talk about agriculture, the farmers can use decision theory in that we can now see what are the prevailing conditions. We are here in the month of September. What is the prevailing condition? In this case, as a farmer, do we have adequate rain? And if so, with that assumption of the flow of adequate rain, the farmers can adequately determine the kind or the right crop to plant, given the fact that if you're in short rain season, there are certain plants that may require only short rains or little rain for that matter to mature up. So the knowledge of decision theory, and in particular maybe the states prevailing long rain, unfortunately because of the climatic changes which are experienced all over the world, it has become very difficult to predict how much rain we expect particular point. But what we are saying, in a normal circumstance, if farmers would be able to determine the prevailing condition, they can predict and focus the kind of crop to put up based on prevailing conditions, weather, as well as their ability, which is the strategies as how do I need labor force or farm machinery, all that they can help. Finally, we have this, this is not final, but I have this 7. I can have this area, what we call the purchase and inventory. This would be under what we call inventory planning and management, purchase and inventory. Now you see in the operations of production, there is always the acquisition of raw material, there is the time, the lease, or whatever we need. Now, with the knowledge of quantitative analysis, I think the farms can be able to determine how much to stock, how much to acquire, or how much to order, and how much it will cost. So all those management control and inventory control, they'll be utilizing the techniques of quantitative analysis, and for that matter, it is important that inventory control or purchase or procurement, they require the knowledge of quantitative analysis. And the last one is, we call it research. We call it research and development. Research and development. Now, what are you saying? That managers can use mathematical techniques to determine eventual profitability in certain inputs, or what we call managers can actually determine the profitability of new products, may say in the market, in terms of probability of their success or failure. So with this, you can now see how much can we now develop for this kind of product, because if we talk about maybe a new kind of maybe like the consumer industry, we have various kind of goods, be it in the cosmetics, be it in the cooking area, be it in the textiles. All these with the probability of success, the research can be conducted and predict what kind of item you can engage it. And therefore, with this, among others, remember the various techniques, even regression, correlation, and linear programming, they are all these, because in linear programming, we talk about personnel management under what we call the assignment problems, and those ones, those not in the new syllabus, but then they are all coming, personnel management still under Markov and even assignment, they are all under the quantitative analysis areas. So for that matter, these are the summary of various areas in which we can apply the quantitative analysis. And that is all we have. Thank you very much. As I said, we are handling only that question 4A. Question 4B, we are not looking into it because dealing with game theory. And question 4C is dealing with the queuing problem. The 2B and C are not actually retained with the current syllabus. For that matter, we are not going to do those questions. We only have to handle question 4A, which was enumerate 8 applications of quantitative analysis in business, and that is 8 marks. So we stop there for that question and move on to the next, if there is any other that will still be retained in the current syllabus. Thank you very much.
Greetings, candidates, and welcome to the revision of the financial accounting paper that was done in May 2021. In our today's session, I'm going to answer question number 2, which is in two parts, A and B. First of all, we are going to answer part A, and I read, Alice Kibibi's accountant has prepared her trial balance, which did not balance, as follows. We have the debit column and the credit column. Then there are, the first item there is returns inward and returns outward. Number 2, there is a capital, sales, purchases, drawings, rent and rates, motor vehicles, discounts allowed, and discount received, accounts receivable, and accounts payable. Candidates, you can see there the total debit is 84,420. The total credit is 5 million. Additional information number 1, a credit note for 2,850,000 was entered in the account of customer P Toro, but no entry was made in the returns account. Number 2, the sales accountant was overcast by 4.8 million. Number 3, 2,970,000 shillings of goods withdrawn for Alice Kibibi's personal use was entered into the drawings account, but no other entry were made. No other entries were made. Number 4, a discount allowed of 2,520,000 was credited in error to the discounts received account. Number 5, cash sales of 19,780,000 had not been entered in the sales account. Number 6, a bad debt of 6.3 million had been entered in the account in the customer's account, but not in any other account. Number 7, the purchases account had been undercast by 2,650,000 shillings. Required, Roman 1, journal entries to enter the above errors. Narrations are not required, 7 marks. Number 2, suspense account duly balanced, 3 marks. So first of all, candidates, we're going to prepare the journal, the general journal, part A, journal entries to correct the above errors. Candidates, errors are corrected through the general journal. Okay, that is what we are going to do. We are going to make the corrections via the general journal. This is the debit side, the credit side. The amounts are in thousands. On this side, we have the particulars. That is the format of a general journal. We are going to make the correction. Number 1, a credit note for 2,850,000 was entered in the accounts of P, but no entry was made in the returns account. That is the error. It's an error of single entry. So we read that it was entered in customer P Toro account. P Toro account. This is a return account of a customer. That means this is a debtor. Candidates, this one is a debtor. P Toro is a debtor, a customer. there was a credit note of which was entered in this account. That means this account was credited. This account was credited with the returns. These are returns. This is a return because it's a data. Where the credit note is used to correct an overcharge. This data was overcharged. So to correct that overcharge, a return is to be, we need to credit this account with returns inward. This is a return inward. The return inward here is 2.850,000. So this is the entry that was made, but there was no corresponding double entry in the return inward account. Double entry. If this account is credited, then this account ought to be debited. Ought to have been debited. Ought to have been debited. There was that omission. So candidates, to correct that error, you can see we need to debit the return. This is returns inward, 2,850,000. So when we debit this account, then the question is which other account, which is the corresponding credit entry? The corresponding credit entry should be made in the suspense account. Suspense account. So this account is debited, suspense account will be credited with return inward. Return inward of 2,850,000. So we will credit the suspense account. Suspense account is credited 2,850,000. That is the correction. No narrations were required. Close it. Error number 2. The sales account was overcast by 4.8 million. The sales account was done what? Was overcast. Sales account. Sales account. When sales are made, candidates, increase in sales, what happens? The sales account is always credited. When there is an increase in sales, you credit the sales account. So we are told that the figure in sales account was overcast by 4.8 million. So to correct the excess in the account here, we will debit the sales account 4.8 million. We debit because there is an increase of 4.8 in this balance. So we are going to debit so as to decrease. All right. So if you are debiting this account, then candidates, the corresponding, because this is debited, the corresponding credit entry will be made in the suspense account. Suspense account. So this account is debited. So we write here suspense. Now, the corresponding credit entry, we credit suspense account 4.8 million. So we write here sales. So which account here is debited? Sales account is debited. So we write here sales account debited 4.8 million. Which account is credited? Credit suspense account. Suspense account 4.8 million. 4.8 million. This is 4.8 million. So no narrations were required. Close. We are going to correct the third error, which is 2,970,000 shillings of 2,970,000 shillings of goods withdrawn for Alice Kibibi's personal use was entered in the drawings account, but no other entries were made. No other entries were made. Okay? All right? Was entered in the drawings account. In the drawings account. Candidates, when goods are withdrawn for personal use, we know that the drawings account is affected. The cost of sales account is also affected. So when goods are withdrawn for personal use, we debit the drawings account, and we read that were entered in the drawings account. That means this account was debited. 2970 was debited. So if you debit this account, that means that the cost of sales account should be credited with 2970. So this account is credited. In correcting candidates, we credit the cost of sales account because it was not credited. The corresponding entry will be suspense account. Suspense account, if this one is credited, suspense account should be debited 2970. 2970. So we have suspense account debited 2970. Cost of sales account credited 2970. Close. All right, then we move on to the next error. Error number 4. A discount allowed of 2,520,000 was credited in error to the discount received account. Candidates, you can see here we have the discount received account. Then we have seen there is the discount allowed account. So what was the error? 2,520,000 was credited in error to the discount received account. Was credited here in error to 2520. All right, was credited in error. So we first need to remove this amount from the discount received account, and that will be done through the suspense account. So there is this third account, suspense account. So we are going to debit the discounts received 2520 to remove this error. The corresponding entry will be to credit the suspense account. This is discount received 2520. So that is the first aspect. Then the amount ought to have been debited because candidates, the discount allowed is an expense. This amount ought to have been debited in this account. So we can now go ahead and make the right entry. We debit this account 2520. All right, 2520. We debit this account. The narration here is suspense. So debit discount allowed with suspense account, then corresponding entry, credit this suspense account with discount allowed 2520. That is how you make the entries in the ledgers. So we can come here and journalize this correction. You can see, candidates, that discount received is debited. So I write here discount received account debited 2520. Discount allowed is also debited. Discount allowed account is debited 2520. Suspense account is credited with the these two, we get the total. This is 50 40 50 40 50 40. That is how we go about that correction. Number 4, correction number 5, the error is cash sales of 19,780,000 had not been entered in the sales account. Had not been entered in the sales account. Cash sales. So candidates, we have cash account and sales account. That transaction, the two accounts that are affected by that transaction is cash account and sales account. So what was the error? The error is that cash sales had not been entered in the sales account. That tells you that the part that affects the cash account has no problem. The only problem is in the sales account. It had not been entered in the sales account. So when correcting that error, what are you supposed to do? If the sales account was not entered, then you enter it. The amount is 19,780. So the cash account has no problem. The cash account has no problem. So we effect this error through suspense. So if sales account is credited with suspense, then suspense account will be debited with sales. 19,780. So candidates, you see the suspense account is debited 19,780. Sales account, we credit 19,780. 19,780. We are moving on well, candidates, step by step. We are doing this thing step by step. If you attended our class lessons, we are revising what we had covered. We are moving on to error number 6, which reads, a bad debt of 6.3 million had been entered in the customer's account, but not in any other account. Was entered in the customer's account, but not in any other account. So this is a bad debt. Bad debt account. Okay? Had been entered in the customer's account. So the customer's account is okay. And the customer here is debtor. When we have a bad debt, candidates, we credit the customer's account and debit the bad debt account. Okay? Bad debt account. So this bad debt account ought to have been debited with 6.3 million. Now, since the customer's account has no problem, or the entry was made in that account, the account that we'll use to correct this error is just the suspense account. The suspense account. So what do? We are going to debit the bad debt account and credit the suspense account. So we write here bad debt, then write here suspense. So bad debt is debited, debit, bad debt, 6.3 million, credit suspense 6.3 million, close. Then number 7, The purchases account had been undercast. The purchases account had been undercast. The purchases account had been undercast. Purchases account, so we have purchases account has a problem. There's an error in that account. Now, anytime we make purchases, any increase in purchases, candidates, we debit the purchases account. So the total amount in the purchase account is in excess, is less. Undercast means less. The amount is less by 2,650,000. If it is less, then we are going to debit, to add 2,650,000. So we debit the purchases account and credit suspense account, and credit the suspense account. So this account is credited 2650 with purchases. This one is debited with suspense. So we are going to do what? Debit purchases account with 2650, then credit suspense 2650. These are the only errors that were discovered, and that is the solution to part 1, which required the journal entries. Then in part 2, you're going to have the suspense account duly balanced. That tells you there is a balance on this suspense account, and that balance should be obtained from the trial balance. We read that Alice Kibibi's accountant has prepared her trial balance, which did not balance. And candidates, in this question, the examiner did not indicate the suspense account in the trial balance. The examiner simply gave the totals, which were not in agreement. You can see the debit total is 84,420,000. The total credit is 83,310,000. You can see the debit exceeds the credits by 1,110,000. That is the difference, and that difference should be written on the credit side, so that ought to have been written. This 1,110,000 ought to have been written in the trial balance, on the credit side. Okay, that ought to have been included. Let me have it down, candidates, just to help you understand what I'm saying. We have debit and credit in that question, and you can see that the totals on the debit 84,420. The total on the credit is 83,310. 83,310. These are the totals, and they are not in agreement. The examiner did not indicate where the suspense account was to be written in the trial balance. Now, what I'm saying is, ideally, candidates, this suspense account ought to have been written on this side. Suspense account 110. Okay, 1,110,000, because 84,420,000 minus 83,310,000 is equal to 1,110,000. So this ought to have been the position of the suspense account, so that after adding this side and this side, then the balancing figure is the suspense account, and you can see it appears on the credit side. So the double entry, this account. So candidates, this balancing figure, which is on the credit side of the trial balance, should be indicated on the credit side of the suspense account. So we have balance brought down 000 of 1,110,000. This is the first item on the suspense account. The question says suspense account duly balanced. So we need to effect these changes from the journal in the suspense account so that we clear this balance. We use suspense account candidates to balance the trial balance. If there is any errors in the preparation of journals and ledgers, then while preparing the trial balance may not agree if there are errors in the ledgers, as you have seen in this case. So it is an accounting practice to use the suspense account to balance off the trial balance. Then investigations must be carried out to find out why the trial balance is not in agreement. Because ideally, under the double entry system of accounting, when errors are not committed, the total debits should equal the total credits. In this case, that did not happen. So there are errors that were discovered later after investigations. These errors were effected or corrected through the general journal. Then we are going to transfer these transactions that affect the suspense account. We are going to check from the general journal the errors that affect the suspense account. Then we will check if this balance will clear. So let's begin with the first error. You can see the first error returns inwards suspense account. You can see suspense account ought to be this suspense account candidates. You can see here it is credited. Okay, suspense account is done what? Is credited. So then candidates, the suspense account should be credited, because here you see it says credit suspense account. So we are going to credit the suspense account. The narration is returns inward. So returns inward, returns inward. That is 2850. The second error, candidates, also affected the suspense account. Suspense account is credited with, we are going to credit suspense account with sales 4.8 million. The next error, we can see suspense account is debited with cost of sales. Suspense account is debited. We are going to debit suspense account with cost of sales. The amount is 2970. Moving on to the next error, you can see suspense account is credited, okay, with discount received, discount received, discount allowed, 25. This is 2520, 2520, 2520. The next error, suspense account is debited with sales. Debit this account with sales of 19,780. 19,780. The next error, bad debts, suspense account is credited 63. Suspense account credited, bad debt, bad debt 63. This is 2520, 6300. The last error, purchases, you can see suspense account is credited with purchases, purchases 2650, 2650. So we are going to get the total on the credit side, get the total on the debit side and see if the the suspense account will be in agreement. 27, 29, this is 29. I'm adding the debits first. 2970 plus 19,780. 22, 750. Total credits 111, 2850, 48 plus 2520 plus 2520 plus 63 plus 2650. 22, 750. So candidates, you can see we have the suspense account is duly balanced. Duly balanced. How many marks? 3 marks. 3 marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That means every entry is just a third a mark. A third a mark, 3 marks. For every entry you earn a third of a mark. Then part 1, 7 marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Almost just half a mark. This one is 1 mark. These are half a mark. 12 marks. 12 marks. So we answered part A. Then part B, I read the following details relates to the machines owned by Ujenzi contractors. Machine A, machine B, machine C, machine D, machine E. We are given the cost of each machine and the date of purchase of each machine. Ujenzi contractors' depreciation policy is as follows. Number 1, machine A and B are depreciated on a straight line basis with no scrap value over 10 years. Number 2, machine C is depreciated on a reducing balance basis at 20% per annum with a scrap value of 5 million shillings. Number 3, machine D and E are depreciated on straight line basis over 5 years with a scrap value equal to 10% of the original cost. Number 4, a full year's depreciation for each machine is provided in the year of purchase. Required: a property, plant and equipment schedule from 1st January 2011 to 31st December 2020 with the following details. Number 1 is the date of purchase. Number 2, cost. Number 3, annual depreciation. Number 4, accumulated depreciation. Number 5, net book value. Total 10 marks. 10 marks.
Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello students, welcome to Manifested Online Classes. My name is Joseph Kemani, and in today's class I want us to look on the revision for the paper which was tested in the sitting for November 2019, and I want us to start with question number 1. And in that particular question, it was basically having 2 parts, part A and part B. So in part A, there was a theory from IAS 10, and part B, it was asking about, or basically it was testing about partnership, specifically conversion of a partnership into a company. So I want us to start with part A of that particular question, which was asking about the subsequent events, or basically the events after the reporting date. So the question reads, International Accounting Standards IAS 10 defines event after the reporting date as those events which could be favorable or unfavorable that occurs between the end of the reporting date and the date that financial statements are approved for issue. So with respect to IAS 10, distinguish 1, adjusting event and non-adjusting event, and 2, describe the accounting treatment of those particular events. So that particular question generally was asking about the subsequent events, or what in other terms we refer to as the event after the reporting date. So this is the paper for November 2019, and this is a revision, or the blocks. So we start with question number 1. Question 1. And this particular question here, part A, we have Roman 1. It was asking about the differences between the adjusting event and non-adjusting events. Now, what we need to note here is that when talk about adjusting event, basically we say that these are those particular events which provide additional evidence about the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date. So therefore, we can say that these are events which provides additional evidence about the conditions existing before the balance sheet date, and in our case here, when talk about now the balance sheet date, basically you're talking of the date the financial statement are supposed to be prepared. So in other terms, you can refer to this as the end period date, or basically this is the date the financial statement are supposed to be prepared. So therefore, these are those particular events which provide additional evidence about the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date, and which must be adjusted in the financial statement, which must be adjusted in the financial statement, which were prepared. In fact, the reason as why we refer to this particular event as adjusting event is because once now those particular event occurs, those particular financial statements which were prepared at the balance sheet date, always they will need to be what? To be adjusted, and that's why we refer to them as adjusting event. Then we also have the other term here, and that is non-adjusting events. Non-adjusting events. And basically the difference between these two particular events is that when talk about non-adjusting event, these are those particular events which will need not to be adjusted to the financial statement which have already been prepared. In fact, that's why we have the name non-adjusting. Once now these particular events occur, one, they do not provide additional evidence about the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date, and therefore they will need not to be adjusted to the financial statement which were prepared. So therefore we say that these are events which do not provide additional evidence about the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date, and therefore need not to be adjusted, in the financial statement, which were prepared which were prepared at the balance sheet date, which were prepared at the balance sheet date. So we have a balance sheet which were prepared at the balance sheet date. But this particular event here, once now they take place, basically what you have said is that they will need not to be adjusted in the financial statement which were prepared, but they will need to be disclosed as part of the note. So mean that if at all now they are material or basically they are actually significant, they will always need to be included as part of the note now which will be accompanying the financial statement. So therefore we can say this event must be disclosed as part of the notes, or basically we can talk of a part of the footnotes, which accompany the company's financial statement, statement. So therefore, that is the difference between those particular two events, that is adjusting event and non-adjusting event. Basically, you have said that adjusting event are those particular events which provide additional evidence about now the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date. And a good example of this particular event is whereby maybe one of the debtor who owed the company a certain amount of money is declared bankrupt after the year has come to an end. Now, that particular event needs now to be adjusted in the financial statements which were already prepared. But that will only happen if at all now those particular events involve now a significant amount. Because if at all they do not involve significant amount, then in this case they can just be ignored. But on the other hand, when we talk about now the non-adjusting event, these are those particular events which do not provide additional evidence about now the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date. And therefore, you have said that as a result of that, those particular events need not to be adjusted. So they just need to be disclosed as part of the notes which now will be accompanying the financial statement. And a good example of this particular event here, that is a non-adjusting event, is whereby, for example, the company decided to do a merger, decide to do an acquisition, but once now the year has come to an end. Another good example of that is whereby the company decide to pay dividends once now the financial year has come to an end. Or maybe we have a scenario whereby the company decide to sell or maybe to acquire some asset once now the year has come to an end. Now, all those are good examples of non-adjusting events, and basically what you have seen is that once now those events take place, because they do not provide additional evidence about the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date, they need not to be adjusted. They just need to be disclosed as part of the footnote which now accompany the audited financial statement for them now to be brought now to the attention of the shareholder. So that is the difference between those two events as defined by IAS 10. Now, Roman 2 of that particular question, it reads, describe the accounting treatment of this event. So, Roman 2 was asking about the accounting treatment of this event, this event. So basically here when talk about this event, the question here was asking specifically about how an entity should actually account for both the adjusting event and also the non-adjusting event. And basically that is something we have mentioned, but we can summarize it here. So remember, first of all, we have what we refer to as the adjusting event. And basically you have seen that these are those particular events which provide now additional evidence about the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date, and therefore once now this particular event occur, they will need to be adjusted in the financial statement which have already been prepared. But that should only be the case if at all now this particular event involves significant amount. So therefore in this case, first of all we can say if this event are material of, or if this event involves a significant or maybe material amount they need or they should be adjusted in the financial statement. They should be adjusted in the financial statements which were prepared at the balance sheet date. Remember, in our case here, we have said that we talk about the balance sheet date. Basically, you have said that this is the date when the financial statements are supposed to be prepared. So, mean that if at all the financial year of a company is ending on 31st of December, then that is the date the financial statements are supposed to be prepared. It basically we refer to that as the balance sheet date. Now, on the other hand, we may be having adjusting events which basically involve insignificant or basically material amount. So, mean that whether those maybe events are adjusted in the financial statement or not, they will not affect the decision which will be made by the various users. And therefore, in such a case, we say that those particular events involve insignificant or basically material amount. In such a case, IAS 10 then recommends such events can actually be ignored, because whether they are adjusted in the financial statement or not, by the end of the day, they will not affect now the decision. So therefore, we can say if this event involves insignificant amount, they can be ignored. So basically, by saying that they can be ignored, that means that the financial statement which had been prepared need not to be adjusted, adjusted simply because those particular events, they are not what? Material. Basically, they do not involve a material amount. So therefore, that's how the adjusting event should be accounted for. Basically, that is the accounting treatment of what we refer to as the adjusting event. Still, in this particular question here, you are supposed now to explain or basically to expound the accounting treatment of now what we refer to as the non-adjusting what? Event. So we can talk of the non-adjusting event. So the first thing we need to remember here is that when we talk about this event here, that is a non-adjusting event. Basically, you have said that these are the event after the reporting date or after the balance sheet date, which do not provide additional evidence about the conditions which were existing before the balance sheet date. And therefore, we have said that because they do not provide additional evidence about the conditions existing before the financial statement were prepared, they need not to be adjusted in the financial statement. But in a case here, what we have said is that according to IAS 10, if at all they are material, always they will need to be included as part of the notes which now will be accompanying the company's financial statement. So therefore, that what we need to summarize here. So we say that these events need not to be adjusted in the financial statement prepared at the balance sheet date, and the balance sheet date, but should be disclosed, disclosed, that means that they should be included, they should be disclosed as part of the footnotes, footnotes. Basically, when we talk about the footnotes here, we are talking of the notes now which accompany the financial statement. As part of the footnotes accompanying the company's financial statement, financial statement. Yes. So basically, that is the accounting treatment of both what we refer as adjusting events and basically non-adjusting events. So that's what was asked in that particular question, number 1A. And then let's proceed to part B of that question. That part B is a question from the topic of partnership, which basically is a compulsory topic in financial reporting, CPA section 3. And we go through that particular question, and it reads, Chada, Pete, and Teda have been partners in a business for many years, sharing profit and losses in the ratio of 2:2:1 respectively. On 30th June 2019, the partners agreed to convert their business into a limited liability company to be named Chapete. So therefore, going through that particular statement, what we need to note here is that this is a question for conversion. It is a partnership business which is to be converted to a limited company. So such a question is very, very simple if you get such a question in an exam, because what we just need to do first of all is to cross off the books of accounts of the partnership. Basically, we do that by opening the main account, being the realization account. 2, you then need to open the books of accounts of the company or of the new company. So basically, in most of the cases, what will be required to do in such a question is to prepare the realization account, to prepare the partner's capital account, and also to prepare now the new balance sheet of the company, which make that question to be very simple. So we are told the trial balance extracted from the partnership books, or basically from the records of partnership as at 30th June 2019, whereas for us, so we are given now the trial balance of the partnership before conversion, whereby we have property at cost, plant and equipment at cost. We have a motor vehicle, furniture and fixtures, provision for depreciation. Basically, that is the accumulated depreciation for building, plant and equipment, motor vehicle, furniture and fixtures. We have the net profit for the year. We have trade receivables and trade payables. We have inventory as at 30th June 2019, cash at bank balance. We have a capital account, bank loan, current account, drawings, and then we are also given some additional information. Note 1, we are told that the property, plant and equipment in the partnership were to be depreciated as follows. We are given the depreciation policy of the partnership, and then the last sentence of that point, we are told depreciation for the current year, that is for the year ended 30th June 2019, had not been provided for. So number 2, we are told the partners were entitled to an interest on the capital balances at the rate of 10% per annum, and then we are told no salaries. The partners were not entitled to any salary. And then number 3, we are told the or the tangible and current asset. Basically, when we talk about tangible and current asset, we are talking of the PP. That is the same with property, plant and equipment, were transferred to the new company at the following fair values. So we have that in note 3, and then in note number 4, we are told the current asset and the liabilities are taken over by the company at their book value. And then number 5, we are told that the purchase consideration amounted to 10 million and was settled by the new company through the issue of ordinary shares of shillings 10 each to the partners in satisfaction of the amount due to them upon the conversion. Now, what we are required in that question, which was having a total of 14 marks, 1 is to prepare realization account, 2 is to prepare now the partners capital account, and 3 is to prepare now the opening a statement of financial position of the company immediately after now the conversion. Now, for this particular question, what we are going to do even before we go to the requirement there, to prepare the realization account, the partner's capital account, and the opening statement of financial position of the company. If you go back to the trial balance which we have there, you'll be in a position to see that we are given the net profit for this partnership for that year, but what we are told in note 1 is that this partnership are not accounted for the depreciation for the current year. So therefore, what we are going to do, number 1, is basically to prepare the appropriation account. So we take that net profit, we account for the depreciation, which is an expense which are not being accounted for, and then from there we distribute the net profit to the partners, of which now that net profit for the year will be distributed in form of various appropriations. In our case, we are going to have 2 appropriations. As per note 2, we are going to have interest on capital, and still we are going to have share of profit. So once we do that, then we prepare partners current account, so that now we can account for those appropriations, interest on capital, share of profit. We also account for partners drawings and so on. And once we are through with that, we cross off now the partner's current account to the capital account. And then now from there, we can then proceed and do what is required. So therefore, let's start by preparing the appropriation account. So we can do away with this. So we start by preparing the partner's appropriation account. A partner's appropriation account. So this is still a question 1. Question 1 is part B. So this will be part of the workings. And we start by preparing the appropriation account. So in this particular appropriation account, I've said the reason why we are preparing it is basically now to distribute that profit for the year now to the various partners, or basically to the 3 partners in form of interest on capital, in form of share of profit, and so on. So what we just need to do here is we can have 2 columns. We have 2 columns, and we start with the net profit for the year. And the net profit for the year, we're given that in the trial balance, and that is given as an amount of 28,800. So having that net profit, there is some information which are given in additional information note 1, that the depreciation on PP for the current year had not been accounted for. Basically, what we know is that depreciation is an expense, and depreciation being an expense, it should have been deducted from this particular profit. And taking into account it was not deducted, so that is the first thing we need to deduct. So we need to deduct now the depreciation. So we are going to compute now the depreciation as per note 1, the depreciation for buildings, and basically we are told that depreciation for buildings will be 2%, and we are told that depreciation, the buildings are depreciated using straight line method. So mean that we should take 2% of the cost. So the cost of the building is 50 million, and take into account our figures are in thousands of shillings. That will be 2% of 50,000. Then we also compute the depreciation on a plant and equipment, and in our case we are told it will be 12.5, which is the same with 12.5 over the reducing balance. So depreciation in respect to that will be computed not on the cost but rather on the net book value. So the net book value of plant and equipment will be equal to cost 25,000 minus 13,000, and that will give us 12,000. So we should compute the depreciation on based on the net book value. So we also compute the depreciation on motor vehicles, and the depreciation on motor vehicles is 20% using straight line method. So we compute depreciation based on cost. So the cost of motor vehicle is 12,000, and then we also computed the depreciation on furniture and fixtures, which is 10% still on straight line. So on straight line we compute depreciation based on cost. So the cost in that case is 4,000. And to compute those particular depreciation, and because we are told in our case they were never accounted for, so we first of all less them from our net profit before appropriating the same to a partner. So for building, it will be 2% of 50,000, and that will be 1,000. So then we have 12.5%, 12.5% of 12,000. That will be 1,500. We also have depreciation on motor vehicles, 0.2 times 12,000, which will be 2,400. And then finally we have depreciation on furniture and fixtures. That will give us 400. Hope that is, we can confirm that is 4,000, yes. Being 4,000, it will be 400. So what we need to do is to less all those particular depreciations from the net profit for that year. So we have 2,800 minus 1,000 minus 1,500 minus 2,400 minus 400. So that will give us 23,500. So basically we can say that that is now the net profit before now the various appropriations. Now, in case of a partnership, once we get this particular net profit for the year, we are supposed to check whether we have any interest on drawings. So if at all we have interest on drawings, should be added. But if we go through that information which we have in note 1 up to note 5, there is no any information we are told about interest on drawing. So what that means is that we need to proceed and we list the appropriations. And the first appropriation which we are going to list here should be in note number 2, whereby we are going to less the interest on capital, capital. Now, the interest on capital as per note 2, we are told it was 10% of the fixed capital balance. So, in our case, taking into account we have 3 partners, we need to compute the interest on capital for those partners. We start with the Chada, we have Pete, and then we also have the other partner who is Teda, and we compute that interest on capital. So we are told it should be 10%. 10% of the fixed capital balances. So the fixed capital balances of those partners is given in the trial balance. For Chada, it is 30,000. For Pete, it is 20,000. And then for Teda, it is 10,000. So we get 10% of that. So 10% of these will give us 3,000. Being an appropriation, we less it from that. So we have 2,000. And then we have 1,000. So we less that from our net profit, so that now we get the amount to be shared as a profit. So we have 23,500 minus this will give us a total of 6,000. Yes, so the amount now to be shared as a profit will be 17,500. So that is the amount to be shared as a profit. So we will be having the share of profit, and that particular profit here, it will be shared among now our three partners. That is Chada, we have Pete, and then we have Teda. And if we go back to the first paragraph there, we are given the profit and loss sharing ratio. We are told that these particular partners were sharing the profit and losses in the ratio of 2:2:1. So mean that if we are to get the total of that, that will give us 5. So mean that Chada is supposed to get a share of 2 all over 5. Pete the same, 2 all over 5. But Teda in this case, 1 all over 5 times now the amount to be shared, 17.5 times 17.5 times 17.5. So we get now that, or the share of profit by each partner. So we divide that with 5 times 2. So this will give us 7,000 for Chada. Same with Pete. And then for Teda it will be 3,500. And once now we deduct that particular amount to be shared, then we should be able to get 0 there, or basically we get nil. So that is the first thing which was supposed to be done there. After preparing that particular appropriation account, I've said that the next step here should be to proceed and prepare now the partner's current account. So once we prepare the partner's current account, we will be in a position to get the amount which now each partner was supposed to be given back. Because once now a partnership has been converted into a company, the partners are supposed to be given back the amount of money which was due to them. So therefore, what we need to do here is now to prepare the partner's current account. And I've said that once now we prepare that particular account, it will then help us in terms of preparing what is referred as the partner's capital account, which basically is asked in the question. So let's prepare the partner's current account. Partner's current account. So in our case, we have 3 partners. We have Chada, Pete, and Teda. So mean that we will have those 3 columns. So we will have details column, a column for Chada, and then Pete and Teda. Details column, Chada, Pete, and Teda. So we will have that as our details column. Is a column for our first partner, who is Chada, Pete, and Teda. Then equally on the credit side, Chada, Pete, and Teda. So that will be our current account. And the first thing we need to record here is the opening balance in the current account. And if we go back to the trial balance which you are given there, you'll be in a position to see that we have the current account for partners, and basically all the current accounts of the 3 partners were having credit balances. So the first thing we should have here is a balance brought down. For Chada, it was 4,280, Pete 3,560, and then for Teda it was 2,340. 2340. So then from there, before we even post these particular appropriations, if we go back to still the trial balance, the last item, we have partners drawings. So the partners drawings always when preparing these accounts are supposed to be debited. So we have drawings for Chada 1580, 1170, and 710. So we have those drawings. Then from there, I think we can post these appropriations. So first of all, we have interest on capital. The interest on capital is always supposed to be credited in this account. So we have interest on capital. Interest on capital for Chada is 3,000. For Pete is 2,000. And then for Teda is 1,000. And then from there we have the share of profit. Still the share of profit is supposed to be credited in this account. Share of profit. For Chada is 7,000. For Pete still the same, 7,000. And then for Teda is 3,500. Yes. So we have that. And I think those are the three items, or basically the various items which will be posted to that account. That is interest on capital, the share of profit, and also the partners' drawings. Basically, once we have posted those items, you have said that the balancing figure in this particular account, or basically these accounts now will be crossed off to what we refer as the partners' capital account. And the objective is basically to know how much amount was supposed to be given back to these partners once now this partnership business was converted into a company. So let's do that. We balance our account here. And we have said that the balancing figure will be transferred to partners' capital account. So we start with the current account of Chada. So we have 4280 plus 3,000 plus 7,000. So that will give us 14,280. 14,280. So the balancing figure here will actually be crossed off to partners' capital account. Will be crossed off to partners' capital account minus 1580, and that will give us 12,700. So we equally do the same for Pete. So we have 3560 plus 2,000 plus 7,000. That will give us 12,560. 12,560. So minus 1170. So 11,390. And finally we have Teda 2340 plus 1,000 plus 35. That will give us 6840. 6840. We less 710. That will give us 6130. 6130. Yes. So in our case now, those particular balancing figures now will actually be transferred to a capital account. And I think having that now, we can now quickly answer what was or basically prepare what was required, because I've said that what we have done here, appropriation account, partners, current account, this is part of the workings. So you had to prepare those two accounts even before you proceed to answering the question, but the question now is very simple. So we start with Roman 1, whereby we are required to prepare the realization account. We prepare the realization account. So when talk about this particular account here, basically this is an account which is intended to cross off the books of accounts of the partnership. And basically to do that, what we just need to remember is that when crossing off the books of partnership, one, with all the assets which were transferred now to the new company, we need to credit those particular asset account at their book value, and then we debit the realization. 2, with the liabilities which were taken over, we debit the respective liability account, we credit realization, and then with the purchase consideration which is paid by the new company, we are supposed now to credit this account, and then we debit now the partner's capital account. So in our case, if we go to note number 3, we are told the tangible and current asset, which include property, plant and equipment, motor vehicle, furniture and fittings, were transferred to the new company. So those are the 4 assets which were transferred, and still in note number 4, we are told the current asset were transferred. So mean that all the assets which were there in this partnership were transferred now to the a new company. So the first thing we therefore need to do is basically to cross off those particular asset account. And I've said that because assets do have a debit balance, to cross off an asset account, we credit the asset account and then we debit what? The realization. And always we have to remember that we do that at the book value of the asset. So the asset now which we have in the statement or in the trial balance, first of all we have a property. So we can start with the property. Property, and what we are given in the trial balance is the cost. We don't cross the asset account at cost, but rather we cross them at a net book value. So the cost of property was 60. But to this now what we need to do is to less the accumulated depreciation. So the accumulated depreciation, first of all we have the accumulated depreciation at the start of the year, 6,000, and then still that depreciation does not include the depreciation for the current year, which is 1,000. So the total accumulated depreciation will be 5,000 plus 1,000, and that will give us a total of 6,000. So that will give us 54,000. Remember our figures here are in thousands of shillings. So then below that we have plant and equipment. So the plant and equipment, what is the cost? The cost is 25,000 minus the accumulated depreciation. The accumulated depreciation will be 13,000 plus the depreciation for the year. And that should give us 14,500. So we can add that. So we have 13,000 plus the depreciation for the year 13. That is 1,500. So that will give us 14,500. And then we less that from the cost. From the cost minus 25,000. That will give us 10. Yes, so then from there we go back to the trial balance. We have motor vehicles. The cost for motor vehicles is 12,000. And then we less the accumulated depreciation, which will be at the start of the year, it was 4,800. 800 plus the depreciation for the current year, which is 2,400. That gives us 7,200. 7,200. So we less that from the cost of 12,000, and that will give us 4,800. Yes, below that what we have is furniture and fixtures. So the cost is 4,000. To this we less the accumulated depreciation, which will be equal to 1,600 at the start, plus the depreciation for the current year, 400. That will give us 2,000. Yes, that will give us now a net book value of 2,000. Yes, so those are basically the non-current asset. Then equally what we are told in note number 4, the current asset were taken over. So in our case, the current asset which we have, first of all we have the trade receivables. The trade receivables, the book value for that is 18,200. And then below that we have inventory. inventory. The book value for that is 25,300. And then we also have cash at bank. Cash at bank, which is 81,20. Yes. And I think those are the only asset which we have. So mean that in our case, we have crossed off all the asset account. So having done that, we need then to proceed and we cross the liabilities account. And in note number 4, we are told that all the liabilities, basically all the current, all the liabilities were taken over. So if we go back to the trial balance, the liabilities which we have, first of all, we have the trade payables. And remember in our case here what we have said, to cross the liabilities account, because the liabilities do have a credit balance, we debit the specific liability account and then we credit the realization account. So we have trade payables. So the book value for trade payables was 14,700. And then from there, which other liability do we have? Yes, we have another liability there, which is a bank loan. Which is a bank loan, which is 18,000. 18,000, yes. And in our case, we don't have any other liability. So mean that we have crossed off the asset account, the liabilities account. The other thing we also have now to remember to account for is the purchase consideration, because once now a partnership is converted to a company, the new company must pay the existing partners of this partnership a certain amount of money. So once that purchase consideration is paid, then it is supposed to be credited in this account and then debited in partners capital account. So we have the purchase consideration here, purchase consideration, and the purchase consideration we are given that in note number note number 5, and we are told that the purchase consideration was an amount of 110,000. 110,000. Yes, we have that. Yes, and I think in our case we have accounted for all the items which were supposed to be crossed off here. So once now we have crossed off all the books of account of the partnership, the balancing figure in this particular account here usually reflect a gain or a loss on sale, because in this case the partnership business is actually presumed to be sold to the company. So once now the partnership business is sold to the new company, it can be sold at a profit or at a loss. So the balancing figure therefore in this account, which is a gain or a loss, is supposed now to be shared among the partners using their profit and loss sharing ratio. And basically we cross it off now to what refers the partners capital account. So therefore what we need to do is basically to balance this account, and I've said that the balancing figure basically is a gain or a loss, which now will be crossed to partners capital account. So let's get the total. On the credit side we have for 17,400 plus 18,000. I can confirm that the loan is 18,000. Yes, and then we have 110. Yes, so that will give us a total on this side of 142, 700, and then we add all this. We have 54,000 plus 10,5 plus 48 plus 2,000 plus 18,200, 200 plus 25,300 plus 8120. Yes, and we have a total here of 122,910. So the total which is more is 142,700. 142,700. So if now we have a balancing figure on this side, basically that is a loss on sale, or basically a loss on the sale of a partnership. And basically I've said that that is supposed now to be crossed off to partners capital account. To partners capital account, and it will be shared among now the three partners using their profit and loss sharing ratio. We have Chada, Pete, and then we have Teda. So remember the profit and loss sharing ratio is 2 all over 5 for Chada and Pete, and then 1 all over 5. 1 all over 5. And the loss in our case will be the balancing figure, minus 142, 700. Yes, that will give us 19,780. 19,780. 19,780. Yes, so we divide that with 5. Divide that with 5 times 2. That will give us the loss to Chada as 7912. 7912. And then we divide that with 2, which will give us 3956. So therefore, in our case, we are through now with the realization account. Yes, I want us, first of all, we take a short break, and then we come back, we do the remaining parts, Roman 2 and Roman 3, whereby we are required to prepare the partner's capital account and the opening statement of financial position of the new company. So we take a short break and then we come back.
Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
So welcome back. I want us we continue with the Roman 2 of the same question, question 1. And in Roman 2 of that question, it was requiring the preparation of a partner's capital account. So we are required to prepare a partner's capital account. Partner's capital account. Basically, to prepare this is very simple because we have all the items which are required here. So the format is the same with that of the current account. The format is the same. So we have the details column. The column for Chada, for Pete, and for Teda. Details column there. You have a Chada, Pete, and Teda. Yes, and the first thing we need to record here is the opening balance in the partner's capital account, and we have that in the trial balance. So we have the balance brought down. Always these accounts do have a credit balance. For Chada is 30,000. For Petty is 20,000. For Teda is 10,000. 10,000. Yes. So we have that. Then what will be posted to this particular account? We have a number of items. We have to remember one. We say that this particular purchase consideration will actually be shared among the three partners, but usually that is a balancing figure in this account. Once you balance that account, the balancing figure should always be equal to 110. But before we do that, because that will be the balancing figure, let first of all we post now this amount here to the partner's capital account, and because this amount in this account has been debited, so what we need to do in this account is to credit, so that we complete the double entry. So we have the closing figures from our current account. For Chada is 12,700, for Pete is 11,390, and for Teda is 61,30. 61,30. 2, we also have to remember that from the realization account, we had these particular losses which were shared among partners. And these particular losses, take into account in this particular account, they have been debited. So we need to complete, or basically we need to post them now to the partner's capital account, basically by crediting them here because in that account they have been debited. So we have the closing balances in the realization account. For Chada we have 7912. For Pete 7912. And then for Teda is 3956. Yes. So I think having that, what we just need to do is to balance that account, and basically the balancing figure we have said should be equivalent to 110 because that is the amount now to be shared among partners in respect now to the amount which was due to them. So let's do that. We balance our account here. We balance our partner's capital account. So the total in the column for Chada will be 30,000 plus 12,700 plus 7912. That will give us 5612. Should be the same amount on this side. And then we have the total in the capital account for Pete, 20,000 plus 11,390 plus 7912. That will give us 39,302. 39,302. And then for Teda we have 10,000 plus 6130 plus 3956. That will give us 20,086. 20,086. Now, basically what you have said is that if you check in this particular account, we'll be having a balancing figure on this side. And basically, you have said that is now the amount which was paid now to the partners, because these particular partners, the three partners, Chada, Pete, and Teda, they have agreed now to sell their partnership business to a new hood, a company. In this case, were to be paid an amount of how much? 110. So the balancing figures which will be on this side, which now for Chada it will be 50, 612. For Pete 39,302, and for is 302, and for Teda is 20,086. This is the total amount of money which was paid to them, and basically if we are to add all that, it should give us now a total of 110. So therefore we will say that this is the purchase consideration. The purchase consideration which was paid now to the partners, and we can just confirm whether that will be equal to 110. We have 20,086 plus 39,302 plus 50,612. Yes, so that is equivalent to 110, which is equivalent now to the purchase consideration which was paid to them. So in our case, we are through with that Roman 2. So we proceed to the last part of that question, whereby we are required to prepare the opening, or just we can refer to it as a statement of financial position of the new company, which is Chapete. So we have the title here, Chapete Limited. Statement of financial position, and that is immediately after conversion as at 1st July 2019. 1st July 2019. So we just need to have two columns here. Two columns. So we start with the non-current assets. Non-current assets. and current asset which were transferred now to the new company. Remember, during the conversion, those particular assets which now were there in the partnership, in most of the cases, whenever they are to be transferred to the new company, they are transferred at their fair value, all at their market value. So therefore, when accounting for them in the books of accounts of the new company, we account for those assets at their fair value, or basically at their market value. And we have that in note number 3. So first of all, we have property. We have property. Property was transferred at a value of 57. In fact, these are just free marks. So you have plant and equipment, which is 16,000. We have motor vehicles. So the value for that is 95. And then we also have furniture and fixtures. Furnitures and fixtures were taken at a value of 3,500. And always here, when the partnership business is actually sold to a new company, usually that take place at a goodwill. So therefore, it is always advisable to determine, or you must determine now the goodwill on acquisition, or basically on business purchase. So we determine that, or we compute that goodwill by taking the purchase consideration. The purchase consideration in our case we know is 110 million. And then to this, we are supposed to deduct the net asset which were acquired. Basically, when we talk about now the net asset which were acquired, we take now the asset which were acquired minus now the liabilities. Now, the asset which were acquired, first of all, we have all these assets in note number 3. And I think we can just get the total of the assets. So as given, or as we have here, so we just add all these. So we have 57,000. Plus 16,000 plus 9,500 plus 3,500, and still to this we have to remember to add the current asset which were acquired.